or over the weekend. So let's start off with the big questions. I've got 6 questions for you guys. We're going to start off with the ones surrounding Penn State. Penn State loses to UCLA, a UCLA team that, like I said in the intro, has not won a game all season long. Penn State, a title favorite, the team that was ranked number 2 in the nation. We talked about when we did our preseason rankings having returning production being so important for all of these teams. And that just has not been the case. Returning production has not been the thing that has led to teams being successful. You look at Texas, who had a quarterback already in Arch Manning. They lose out there. Penn State had 2 running backs combined for over 3,000 scrimmage yards. Drew Aller returning, a really good head coach who just does not lose. They had, before that game against UCLA, had won 34 unranked games in a row. Now they lose to UCLA of all teams, right? James Franklin on the hot seat over there. Returning production again, another issue over there with Illinois, who had a brutal loss to Indiana that loves to use the transfer portal, getting their quarterback over there, Curt Cignetti, very big in the transfer portal. All of these teams that are relying on returning production, it just hasn't worked. You look at Clemson. That is the king of returning production. Where are they now? They've fallen off the face of the earth. Dabo Swinney on the hot seat. So my question for Penn State is twofold here. The first question is there a balance? Because last year we saw Ohio State with returning production dominate. They went on to win a national championship. Is it a year-to-year thing? Is that going to affect the way that coaches do college football? And how long until coaches like Dabo Swinney that don't use the portal are all out of the league and cannot survive at this point? The other question that I had here with them is James Franklin on the hot seat, right? James Franklin, a guy that chronically loses to good teams. He lost to Oregon in the whiteout game. Prime time under the lights in Happy Valley. You can't beat Oregon, who travels halfway across the country to go and get you a big win. These things are kind of unacceptable. Look, the one thing that was keeping James Franklin afloat, the one thing that was keeping him pretty comfortable in his job, if we're being honest, is the fact that James Franklin does not lose games he's not supposed to lose. James Franklin is a very, very good head coach. You look at him being able to build teams through the portal, get guys in there, but Penn State just chronically cannot win these big games, which already in and of itself puts him on the hot seat a little bit, but it's not really the end of the world. Now, losing to UCLA, falling out of the top 25 for a team that had national title hopes, a team that was preseason number 2 in the nation, that is concerning. That is really, really bad. And I think we're going to start to see a lot of James Franklin hot seat talks. I think he deserves to be there. As far as my first question posed with this takeaway, what's going to be the balance? Is Dabo Swinney and all those guys going to be off of college football in the future? I lean towards yes. You have to be able to use the transfer portal, first of all. But second of all, I don't think returning production is just chopped liver in the league nowadays, right? There are many, many teams that have success with guys that have built with a program. There are teams that have success with guys that have been there for a long time. Look at Georgia Tech, right? Georgia Tech, Haynes King, quarterback, in Heisman conversations, still there, has been there for a while. You look at Vanderbilt, Diego Pavia, he's built something over there with Vanderbilt. This is not just if you can't use the portal, you can't succeed. Now, you're going to have to use the portal. You can't ignore the portal. That's not something that you're going to be able to do. It is just a fact of life nowadays in college football that you need the portal in order to succeed. But James Franklin on the hot seat, and I think it's going to be year to year, whether or not returning production is the king or if it's those big additions in the transfer portal. Question number 2 that I had from this week has to do with the Texas Longhorns. Steve Sarkisian in Texas loses their second big game of the season. They've lost 2 games already. They've only played 2 real games. They go and play the Red River rivalry coming up very, very soon. That one is going to be huge for both them and Oklahoma. Arch Manning has looked disastrous against these teams. Now, to be fair, week 1, he went up against Ohio State, who probably has the best defense in the country. That is something that you have to keep in mind when you're talking about the whole thing around him. People immediately were willing to take the point fingers and say that Arch Manning is not the guy at quarterback. Outside of that, you look at this game that we're talking about. Knowledge on YouTube asked, did he announce it yet? He announces it at 7 p.m. tonight. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that later. But LeBron James has not yet announced his retirement yet. Good question, though. I appreciate you tuning in. But is it time for Texas to move off of Arch Manning? Because Arch Manning, the prince who was promised, right? The guy after Trevor Lawrence who was supposed to be this messiah, guys that teams were tanking for allegedly already in the NFL, even though his family said he was not coming out after this year. Is he just raw, or is he really just this bad? He looks uncomfortable in the pocket. He's not hitting his wide open receivers. He's a little bit behind these guys. He isn't processing the way that he's expected to. And I think a lot of expectations are put on him as a Manning, right? As the next quarterback in a, football royalty family, the Mannings, right? You have his grandfather, you have his 2 uncles, both being either Hall of Fame or fringe Hall of Fame quarterbacks, right? This is not like any other quarterback pressure we've seen before. On top of that, he goes to Texas, and he's making allegedly the most NIL money out of anybody. This is not really a situation where you can bench him, but you do need to start to see results. And the question really is with Texas, is this real, or is this just him not being ready? He's still young. He's getting his first starts against real teams. We're going to learn a lot in that Red River rivalry coming up soon. That's going to be something we have to watch. Third question that I have for you guys surrounding college football this week has to do with the Who's. That's right. Virginia, UVA is here. They have beaten Florida State last week in prime time and double overtime. They go to Louisville this week, a really good ACC team, a team that if they were able to move past Virginia, had a real shot at the ACC title. Virginia's offense looks amazing. Chandler Morris, the quarterback, moving the ball up and down the field. Their defense is a little bit of a concern, but we see that in college football a lot. There's plenty of these just high-powered teams. You look at Tennessee, for instance, another one of those high-powered teams that just seemingly finds a way to win games over and over and over again. But they don't really have the defense to keep up with the big boys. Virginia, as a threat in the ACC, is for real. You look at the other teams in the ACC that are towards the top. You look at Florida State, who they've already beaten. You look at Louisville, who they've already beaten. You look at Miami, who's a real threat. That's probably the favorite over there. But UVA probably second at this point. They're ranked top 20 in the nation right now by the AP poll. You have Georgia Tech, who's a fun team, but I don't really know if they have it in them to beat the top teams in the conference. We'll see. Georgia Tech and Virginia play, I believe, this season. And then Duke as well, who still undefeated in conference play. They did lose a couple non-conference games, so they're going to have to win the conference in order to get into the ACC title, into these playoffs, excuse me. But there are a lot of teams at the top, and I think UVA is one that kind of out of nowhere is a real ACC title contender. But that's the question. Is UVA for real, or is this a magical Cinderella run that teams are just looking past them to get to their next opponent? You can talk about, Florida State looking ahead to play Miami. Louisville has a big game this week as well. Are they just looking ahead of Virginia? Because I don't think that's going to happen anymore after 2 straight big wins. Miami, staying in the ACC, looks amazing. I know they're not this number one team. They're not ranked as the number one team in the nation, but for my money, they're the best team in football. Carson Beck has revived his career, if you want to call it a career revival, after what was a really, really not great season in Georgia last time out, coming off of an injury that held him out of the playoffs. I personally had a lot of questions about what his future in football would look like, but the bigger thing that surprised me with Miami, outside of Carson Beck, is that defense. You have Heisman caliber players all along that defense. And Miami, if they had a defense last year with Cam Ward, what he was putting up on offense, that team could have been maybe the best team in all of college football. They were explosive beyond explosive, but they just didn't have a defense. Now they have not just a defense, but an elite defense, and that is keeping them in games. They take down Florida State 28-22. That's not a game they win last year. They don't keep Florida State below 30 points last year. They go out and they just find ways to win football games, tight ones. The defense continues to step up, and that is the biggest thing for me. Is Miami for real? Because we've seen this every single year, right? Every year the Canes are good. The Canes are back. Welcome back to 2002. This is when the Canes are never going to lose a game, and then they fizzle out at the end of the season. They lose ones in inexplicable fashion. They get sloppy. The defense isn't there. But this year feels a little bit different to me. And maybe I'm crazy for that. But I think Miami is back this year, and I think they're true title contenders. And that's the question. Are they true title contenders? Last question I had, question number 5, talks a little bit about another team that seems like they're back right now. Texas A&M. The Aggies have won multiple games this year that they usually don't win, right? The Aggies have gone out here and they have taken care of business against Notre Dame, 41-40. Questionable call at the end, it doesn't matter. 41-40, they win that game, a game that they usually lose, a game they lost last year. You also have games that they've played against Mississippi State last week that was ugly, but they still find a way to win by 22 points. Is this Texas A&M's year? They're dealing with a couple injuries to quarterbacks. That is something to keep an eye on. But if Texas A&M keeps winning these close games that they usually lose as a program, they're near the top of the SEC, honestly. You could make an argument that they're the class of the SEC right now. The SEC is super jumbled up. You have Alabama, you have A&M, you have Georgia, who did lose to Alabama. You got Vandy, again, lost to Alabama. Oklahoma, who hasn't lost a game, has John Mateer when he's healthy, looks like a Heisman favorite. Mizzou, just crazy out of the gates. Don't sleep on them. Ole Miss, LSU, and Tennessee, despite LSU losing Garrett Nussmeier for the season, they still have a very good defense. Hopefully that offense can figure it out even without Nussmeier. Tennessee has a really explosive offense. I think if you put LSU's defense on Tennessee, they would be the top team in the SEC, but they're not quite there right now. There's a lot to pay attention to around the league, and one of the things that I think we should pay attention to is I don't think there's a clear favorite in any of the Power 4 conferences. We went over the SEC and the ACC already, but we haven't really gone over the Big Ten, who has Oregon, has Ohio State, 2 of the top 3 teams in the nation, and throw Indiana into that mix, right? Indiana is this kind of powerhouse of a team. Curt Cignetti, all he does is win. Look him up. Google him, right? That's what he said at his introductory press conference over there in Indiana. And it's true. All he does is win throughout his entire career. It's incredibly impressive. It's not an easy thing to do, but Curt Cignetti continues to find ways to win football games. In the Big 12, I mean, that's always wide open, isn't it? Texas Tech seems like it's the runaway favorite right now after beating Utah, but you still have a couple other teams that are ranked. BYU still undefeated. They haven't really played anybody. Arizona State, only one loss to a good Mississippi State team that's in the receiving votes category despite another loss last week. But Arizona State back in the top 25. They're always dangerous. You have even more competitors. Baylor is pretty good. Cincinnati is up there, right? There are a lot of teams that you could give a real good shot to win the Big 12. And if you made me close my eyes, gun to my head, pick a team right now to win each conference, there is not a favorite that I feel super confident in any of them. I'd probably go Ohio State, Texas Tech, Miami, and then Alabama. But that's not something I feel super confident in any of those game picks. But those are my big questions, my big takeaways from college football week 5 in the books. We're going to talk about our top 25 as we do every single Tuesday. That's coming up here in just a second. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention over, like I said, to that college football top 25. LeBron James, will he retire tonight? We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. All that and more coming up next here on the Triple Threat Show. Welcome back to the Triple Threat Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is a beautiful Tuesday, October 7th. Got the date mixed up there. Could not find it on my little computer screen over there. There's a lot to talk about. If you're just tuning in, we just finished talking about the big takeaways, the big 5 questions from around college football after a chaotic week that saw a lot of top teams fall and a lot of new contenders rise to the top. We'll go over our top 25 here in just 1 second, but next we have to talk about LeBron James. We have to talk about what's going on in the MLB playoffs, all of that coming on later. Like I said, top 25 here. Let's start off with that. Joined by my friend and co-host Mayrob Fatemi. We're going to break down here. We'll start off as we always do in the group of 5, because the group of 5 gets an automatic playoff spot, Mayrob. It's true. They get one of the most important spots in college football, that coveted spot. One of those teams will make it. So we have to take a look down at what you might call a little bit of a minor league nowadays in college football. But still, you got to be aware, because when the college football playoffs roll around, you have to know who's going to be there and who is not. We'll do a top 5, the G5, T5. We've got 2 teams that I don't think quite make it. James Madison and Navy off of the rankings this week. UNLV holds on to its number 5 spot in the G5, T5. They've just continued to win games, but I haven't been super impressed by them. That's not something that is a bad thing, but in a weaker conference, they're going to have to pull off some really impressive wins, and the teams above them are going to have to lose a couple games for them to really climb up the rankings. Tulane at number 4 here. They're really good, but they have a loss. That's the thing. Tulane does have losses. They've lost to power conference teams. They've beaten power conference teams. They've beaten Duke, who I think is a really good win. But at the same time, Tulane just doesn't feel the same as they have in years past. They're still really good. They've still got a chance. But I don't quite think that they're at the same level as they were last year, where they were pretty much favored outside of Boise State all year long. Top 3 teams are the top 3 teams. The American Conference has 3 undefeated teams and 3 teams that are going to make a lot of noise. How about the Mean Green of North Texas, Mayrob? They are flying around. The North Texas Mean Green are dangerous this year. They're the number 3 team in the group of 5, top 5, and the 2 teams stayed the same. Memphis and USF at the top. I know a lot of people have Memphis ahead of USF after a couple of big wins, but I still think USF is ahead of them. I see the way that they've won against big teams. They've only had lost 1 game, and it's to Miami. Miami, I think, is the best team in the nation. That's not a loss I'm going to really punish them for. I'm taking USF as the favorites, although Memphis really is not far behind them in any way, shape, or form. That's the week 6 group of 5, top 5. But let's take a look at the big boys. Who is actually in the top 25 after 6 weeks of football? We're going to start off at number 25. We had 4 teams drop out, by the way. Texas, Penn State, Iowa State, and Louisville all drop out. Pretty crazy to have that many teams, but it was a crazy week. Cincinnati finds its way into the top 25 this week. They are dangerous. This is a very good Cincinnati squad. Their only loss to Nebraska, a good Nebraska team. They're going to be a contender in the Big 12. Another contender in the Big 12, back in the rankings for the first time in a couple of weeks. Arizona State is back in here. Another big win. Their only loss is to a good, very good, I will say, Mississippi State team who's not quite ready to compete in the SEC, but it was a home game. It was on the road for Arizona State, and I do think that they're very dangerous. South Florida, we talked about already. They're here at number 23, so we're not going to spend too much time on them, Mayrob. BYU, up 3 spots to number 22. They're still undefeated. They continue to win games. And Illinois at number 21, they are also up 3. They beat Purdue by about 14 points. It's Purdue. That's not a super impressive win. But again, outside of that thwomping that they took against Indiana, they've looked really good so far.
Yeah, I really honestly like that list. I mean, shout out South Florida, who have really burst onto the scene so far over these last 5 weeks and really just continue to play good football. I know they lost to Miami. They got blown out by Miami. But they have wins over SC State. They have wins over Florida, wins over Boise State. They're still a good team. They're still hanging around. and I expect them to kind of stay in this 20 to 25 range. Outside of that, Illinois, I know Illinois is one of your top teams. I know you're really high on them. Did suffer a couple tough losses, but I think they can still hang around. I think they'll still hang around in that top 25 and still make it by the end of the year. I think it's a good first five spots right there, man.
Let's get down to the top 10 here, Rob. Let's start off at number 20. Not ranked, the Virginia Cavaliers, the Who's, hop up here after their second straight ranked win for me. I had Louisville ranked last week. They fall out of the top 25. I know a lot of people didn't, but I was high on them. Virginia with a big, big win. They're up to number 20. Vanderbilt loses to Alabama. I'm not going to punish them too much. They're still in the top 20. I had them ranked a little high, honestly. I had them all the way up at 11, so they're down to 19, drop 8 spots. Michigan up 5 spots now from last week. Michigan, a very good football team. Again, they just find ways to win. I know they had that tough loss against Nebraska, but I do like this Michigan squad a lot. Utah up 4 spots to number 17. The only loss so far to a Texas Tech team that I think firmly sits in the top 10 right now. That's just a good loss. I'm not going to punish them too much. Tennessee, with only 1 loss on the season, up to number 16, up 3 spots from last week. They continue to win games. I'm very concerned about that defense, like we talked about in the first segment, but still, this is a good Tennessee squad. The way that Joey Aguilar is playing football, I don't think there's a lot of teams that can beat them. Lose to Georgia in 2 overtimes, that's, again, a good loss, so I'm not punishing them too much for it. Georgia Tech, we talked about, still undefeated, survives a scare against Wake Forest, so I'm not going to be too high on them. That's the reason they're not higher than 15. But still, if you get a lead, if you're Georgia Tech and you get a lead, it is really, really hard because of the way they run the football. Hayes King is just a monster at quarterback, and more, I should say, like running back quarterback kind of thing. It's like a RQB right there, but he can throw the ball a little bit. It's not just running a little bit, but still, Georgia Tech dominant on the ground. They will salt the game away if you let them get any kind of lead. Here's where Florida State falls, and maybe I'm a little higher on Florida State than some other teams. They're down 2 spots after a second straight loss, this one to Miami, but they've lost to 2 ranked teams in Virginia and Miami. So again, I still think they're really good. You have to remember, they beat Alabama. That's a really good win. Florida State's a really good team. I'm not punishing them too much. They're down here to number 14. Notre Dame rises again, and again, maybe you look at their losses and you say, what? They've lost so many games. They lost to Miami, best team in the country. They lost to Texas A&M, maybe the best team in the SEC, right? Notre Dame is a very, very good, very good football team. Notre Dame is not one that we should be taking lightly, Mayrob. But they're up here all the way to number 13. LSU at number 12, they lose Garrett Nussmeier. Once they lose a game, I'm going to be honest, they're going to fall pretty far. But I don't like to punish teams for not having a quarterback. But once they do lose a game, I'm going to be very, very scared for them. And at number 11, right before we hit the top 10, I've got Missouri. Put some respect on Missouri's name. They're up 5 spots to the fringe of the top 10. Ahmad Hardy, their running back, leading in all of college football for rushing yards despite a bye week. He's been an absolute monster. Missouri, not a team you want to go up against. I think they're better than last year, and they peaked at like number 6 last year in the AP poll. I'm a big fan of this Missouri Tiger team.
I mean, the Tigers are 5-0. Did they beat up on UMass one of these weeks? Yes, they did. But you can't judge them for how they play. I think once they get one of these losses, I think this is one of those teams that could also fall a decent amount, could fall down to the mid-20s, fall into the 20 range. But I mean, other than that, this is a really good list. I mean, LSU's a really good team. I expect them to still hang around. But Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech, still hanging around over there. This is a really good list. I like it a lot, and let's go cracking into the top 10.
Let's go cracking into the top 10 here. This is a top 10 that I think the teams in the top 10 probably pretty much identical to everybody else, but maybe the order is a little bit off there. At number 10, I've got Texas Tech. They hit the top 10 for the first time this week. They're a very, very good football team. I talked about them being the class of the Big 12. I love this Texas Tech squad. They're not a team you want to face. That defense, and we talked about transfer portal. How about that transfer portal showing up big for Texas Tech? Everything we wanted them to be and more Texas Tech is. Indiana up a spot to number 9. I love this Indiana squad. People are putting them at number 7 or even higher. Kurt Cignetti is a very good coach, and Fernando Mendoza is leading a very good team, but I still have questions about them if they can really hang with the big dogs. We're going to get our answers this week. They're taking on Oregon, potentially game of the week. That one is going to be huge, huge, must-watch television. Oklahoma stays in the top 10. If they can win the Red River rivalry without John Mateer, they're going to skyrocket into the top 5. That's my big thing with them. I don't know how they're going to look without him, and maybe that's unfair of me, but I do think there are teams above them that have very impressive resumes that, at the end of the day, probably beat Oklahoma right now. At number 7, we're going with Ole Miss. Ole Miss stays still after a bye week. They are a fringe top 5 team, and maybe I should have them higher, but I just don't really see a reason to move them above the other teams in the SEC that are ahead of them in my ranking. Georgia ahead of them, and again, that's a team I'm way higher on than a lot of other teams. Their defense is elite. Kirby Smart finds ways to win, and their only loss this season is against Alabama. I'm not punishing them for that. Alabama is a team that I have real high up here, so I'm not punishing Georgia too much for that loss. Texas A&M down a spot to number 5. They fall one spot. Again, they dominated. They beat Mississippi State. I'm not worried about them. It's just about other teams looking really good, looking impressive, and I wanted to move them up. That team being Alabama. The Crimson Tide are a team that I really am a big fan of. I think they're favorites in the SEC. You have a lot of guys behind them. All of the guys that are right behind them, Texas A&M, Georgia, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, those teams are going to be right behind them in the ranking. But again, they just find ways to win. Ty Simpson, quarterback, playing really, really, really good, and I'm not scared about the Tide at all. Kalen DeBoer, a very good coach. Getting into the top 3, these should be the top 3 teams in the nation. I don't care what order you have them in. If these are not your top 3 teams, you're frankly wrong. And I don't really know how to help you outside of that. Ohio State, Mayrob, is at number 3 for me. Again, a lot of people have them at 1. I'm not impressed with the offense. Julian Sayans looks solid, but I think these other teams are a little bit more complete around them, despite Ohio State maybe having the best defense in football. Oregon with a really impressive win, maybe not so impressive now against Penn State, so there's an argument for them to be below Ohio State, but still, they've just been dominating everybody they see, and I'm keeping them at number 2. And at number 1, finally, for weeks I've been saying they're maybe the best team in football. I finally did it. Miami is the number 1 team in college football. They're up 2 spots after their win over Florida State. They have one of the more impressive resumes in all of college football. They've beaten Florida State. They've beaten Notre Dame. They just haven't lost games outside of that. And Miami, with that defense, with the way that Carson Beck is playing, is an absolute monster of a team. And they're at the top spot in college football after 6 weeks.
I love it. I think Miami, that top 3 is undeniable. Miami, Oregon, and Ohio State. Whatever order you have it in, they're the top 3 teams in college football right now. It can't be argued. Outside of them, I personally have my top 5 as Ohio State, Oregon, Miami, Texas A&M, and Bama. That's my top 5 in that order. But, I mean, it's pretty much the same as yours. I think this is a legit list. Texas A&M looks legit. All these teams in the top 10 are most likely going to stay here outside of maybe Ole Miss and Indiana. I think Oklahoma honestly might be here to stay, but the rest of those teams, those other six teams right there, are absolutely legit. This is going to be a fun rest of the season. This is just week 6. We have a lot of weeks left to go before we reach December, but this is going to be a fun next few weeks as we head closer to the college football playoff.
Yeah, absolutely. College football playoffs, not quite right around the corner, but we are basically halfway through the season at this point. Football's come and gone like it's nothing. I swear to God, I blinked and the month of football is gone. I don't know what's going on right now. I have to have football in my life. But football is gone. But that means that other seasons are starting, Mayrob. Hockey kicks off tonight. Puck drop, I should say, is tonight on the NHL season. We kick off a really good one. Should be a lot of fun over there. But also, the NBA season is right around the corner. And we got hit with a couple pieces of really potentially juicy news, I should say, over the last couple of days. And I'm going to start off with the big one. I've been teasing it all show. It's finally time to talk about it. LeBron James with, quote, the decision of all decisions, invoking his famous The Decision, where he said he was taking his talents to South Beach. What could it be now? The most obvious answer, Mayrob, he's announcing a retirement tour. This is something that he obviously is going to do. He's not just going to say, peace, I'm out of here. I don't think he's actually retiring right now, but I do think he will probably announce that he is saying, I got one more year in me. I'm going to play out this contract, and then I'm going to be done. Let's take a little bit of context around LeBron James's career. He has played literally our entire lives. From the moment we have been born, Mayrob, he has been in the NBA. That is insane. The NBA has rode him as like a show pony for his entire career. He's lived up to everything possible. If you don't think he's the best player ever to play in the NBA, I'm not going to argue with you on that. That's just what it is, right? But he is undoubtedly top two. If you say he's not top two, you're just a hater and you're wrong. I'm sorry. It's not a valid opinion if he's not top two. He is top in scoring of all time. If he plays one more season, he's 50 games away from playing the most games all time. He's top 10 in assists, rebounds, basically every single statistical category. And you can say, oh, it's counting stats. He's been doing it forever. But no one's done what he's done consistently for every single age that he has been at. He's been the best 39-year-old, the best 40-year-old, the best 41-year-old, the best whatever. In NBA history. He just has no stop button. He has been a perennial all-pro level guy, perennial all-star. There's no reason to think of him any worse than the second best player of all time. But for my money, he's the GOAT. But this is a really interesting thing because this could be nothing, Mayrob. We're talking about the finality of one of the greatest careers in sports history, but this also could be nothing, right? This could just be an ad. There's been plenty of talks about it. LeBron James, famously, a little bit of a troll over there. I don't know if he's truly waiting for Bryce James to get in the league, but he's so close now. I don't know why he wouldn't. I know he's got 1 year left on his deal, and that was the big discussion heading into the offseason, right? He opts into his contract. Usually he opts out and signs a little 1 year player option with an extension, 2 year with a player option after year one to stay with the Lakers. But now he would be a free agent after this year. And there wasn't a lot of trade interest around him, despite him potentially being on the trade block. I don't know what's going on with that, but what do you make of this situation, Mayrob? Because there's a lot of ways that this could go. And I think I'm leaning towards retirement, but again, it could just be an ad. At the end of the day, we've seen stuff like this before.
I'm not 100% sure, Jeremy. I don't know, man. Like I thought about this for the last like 12 hours and I keep jumping back and forth. I don't know if it's a troll, I don't know if it's a retirement piece, or I don't know if it's him opting out of his contract to go somewhere else. Those are the three legit options that are on the table here. Retirement, free agency, and just him trolling with it. Since, like you said, it was a Nike ad. This is something that's been pushed by Nike. Yes, LeBron did it as well on his platforms, but it's also Nike. I don't know what it is. I really don't know, but we're gonna find out here in the next 2.5 hours. I personally want to say it's not retirement. I want to say it's free agency, just because of how putrid, or not putrid, but how bad the Lakers have looked. They didn't really do a whole lot in free agency, didn't do a whole lot in the draft, didn't do a whole lot anywhere outside of getting Luka Doncic last year. Does Luka look good? Is Luka still a top five player in the NBA? Yes, no doubt about it, and he's going to be a big time help. But he's 41 years old. He's chasing a ring. He just wants to get rings at this point, and this is probably going to be his last year. I could see him announcing his retirement, but I think this is going to be a free agency move, if anything. I really think so.
Again, that's another possibility. Running for president possibility. Announcing that he's been traded, a possibility. Although I don't think Shams would let him do that at this point. FanDuel ad, possible, right? There are lots of ways that it could be. Lots of things it could be. But this again, look, let's run with the possibility here, Mayrob, that this is LeBron James's I'm going to do one more year and then retire announcement. Because really, at the end of the day, as much as I hate it, as much as I don't want him to retire, he's like 42 years old at this point, and it's about time, right? Let's take a look at his career a little bit, because there does need to be some context put to how crazy of a career it was. Like we said, he's all-time top 10 in just about every single stat there is to possibly have. He has won, 4 championships at this point, multiple MVPs. He's been to 20 straight All-Star games. 20 straight. He is just a monster on the court. And I don't think there's really anybody else that compares. Let's talk a little bit about his legacy here. I know I'm not trying to get into the GOAT debate here. That's not something that I really think we need to do here. That's a topic for another day, for when or if he actually decides to retire. We'll do that. But what's his legacy look like? We go 50 years from now. What is LeBron James' legacy on the court?
Most in points, has the number one most in points, averaged 27 points throughout his career, 7.5 rebounds. I'm looking at the stats right now, 7 assists, played over 1,500 games of basketball, won the Rookie of the Year, 4 MVPs, like you said, 4 Finals MVPs, 4 NBA championships. Honestly, I would say he should have won more, but that's another conversation for another day. Yes, is he 4 for 10 or 4 for 8 in the finals or something? Yes, but is he also still one of the best players of all times? He's at the lowest number 2 all time in my opinion. I have him sitting at 2, but I think this is a guy that we're gonna miss when he's gone. He's one of the best players that will ever touch the court. He's gonna stay in the GOAT debate forever. That is going to be a thing that will live on forever, and he's the GOAT. We're just gonna have to wait and see what this announcement is. If he wins another championship, I've said this on the record before too. If he wins one more championship, I think it's gonna be borderline undeniable, him over Jordan. But it's still so tough. I don't know, man. LeBron he's just that dude. It's LeBron versus Michael Jordan, 2 of the best players their to ever touch a athletic platform. So I don't know. I really don't know, man.
Yeah, for sure. And again, one of these things is that we just don't know an NBA without LeBron James, right? Assuming that, again, we're just going to run with the assumption that this is a retirement announcement. Occam's razor, a lot of times it's just the most obvious thing is true, right? That's just how it goes. But LeBron James with the NBA, we talked about LeBron James without the NBA. He'll be fine. He's literally a billionaire. But the NBA without LeBron James, that is another thing. Because one of the things that I think people have been talking about with the NBA a lot is the fact that they don't really push a lot of those younger stars. They're making a big push with Victor Wembanyama. They're making a big push with some of those guys. But the new generation isn't really the face of the league. The old generation still is. You're still talking about Curry. We're still talking about Durant. We're still talking about LeBron. The faces of the previous generation are still the faces of the league. And we're going to have a lot of these face of the league conversations, but it's still LeBron right now. I don't care what you say. It's still LeBron. Like, he is the first person that comes to mind when you think of the NBA, with good reason. The NBA is not going to be the same without him. They're going to lose out on a couple of those. I mean, they're not going to lose out too much. It's the NBA. They're huge. But they're going to struggle to find that next player to advertise around. Is it going to be Anthony Edwards? Is it going to be Luka Doncic? Is it going to be Victor Wembanyama? Are they just going to transition it over to Curry for a couple years, right? There's a lot of things that they could do. But one of the things that the NBA truly is facing is they don't have that face of the league, that next great one that's going to be that for sure guy that everyone thinks of when they think of the NBA. And I think that's super important. That's something that a sport needs when it's advertising. what is the NBA going to be like without him?
Honestly, I love this pivot. I'm so happy that you just brought that up, Jeremy, because the NBA right now, this is the state of the NBA. They're gonna when LeBron retires, they're gonna lose out on LeBron, they're gonna lose out on KD, gonna lose out on Steph Curry. I take that those three guys are gonna retire within the same year to 2 year span. Just how it's gonna be. Damian Lillard will also retire. Um, when that happens, the NBA is going to turn from a USA sport, which, and this is something that's already been happening, from a USA sport or USA dominant sport to an international dominant sport. And you've already seen some of it. Luka Doncic joined the league, Giannis, Nikola Jokic, even this new kid that just came from China that's a rookie in Portland right now that's been an absolute stud. This is something that we'll bring up later as well. Uh, this is something that is going to continue to happen. Even Victor Wembanyama, this is something that is going to continue to happen. I think the NBA has already started doing this. They're going to look globally. They're going to start globally advertising their guys. They're going to start advertising Giannis, Jokic, Wemby, Doncic. And internally on the US side of things, it's going to be like Anthony Edwards, SGA, uh, Jason Tatum. The one thing I do want to say though, and you said it, and I don't want to I don't want to put any pushback. I just want to say the NBA didn't really push the stars too much. They did a little bit, but what really happened was the stars pushed themselves. The stars separated themselves from the rest of the class, and the NBA said, okay, these are the top stars. We'll push them the rest of the way. The players did 75% of the work. Without that these days, that's why you start seeing the NBA feel like, oh, you're pushing an SGA. Oh, you're pushing a Jason Tatum. When back in the day, it was LeBron that put himself outside that class. Steph Curry had his moments that set him apart from everybody else. KD, Devin Booker, all these guys separated themselves from everybody else, and the NBA pushed them as the face of the league. These days, you don't really have that anymore, and that's a big thing that we're gonna have to discuss when those top guys. That's why the NBA still revolves around those old guys because they still have separated themselves from everybody else. So
But I think that's part
it's
of the
gonna be
problem. Like
yeah,
that's how it works, right? The it's not like you walk in and you're like, okay, this is the next guy no matter what. You have some of those guys that come in, like Zion was supposed to be that guy, but he hasn't lived up to expectations, so he's not getting pushed, right? You have to separate yourself from the rest of the crowd. But even the guys that have, right? We're talking about Anthony Edwards. We're talking about Shea. We're talking about, Cooper Flags getting pushed a little bit. We're talking about Wemby. These guys haven't, separated themselves from the old guys. And that, I think, is saying a lot about the old guys, talking about LeBron, talking about KD, talking about Steph. But I think it also is a little bit to do with the NBA. You have these guys that you need to start to transition towards because, again, they're not going to be in the NBA forever. LeBron might retire soon. Curry's going to retire soon. KD's going to retire soon. These are not guys that are going to live in the NBA forever. You need to have a, for lack of better term, succession plan, and it doesn't feel like the NBA has one in terms of marketing. It's super important for a sport, not just for not counting the product on the court, because if you actually watch the NBA, like, you know who the next guys are. You do. But like if you're not watching, if you're just like a super casual fan, who's going to be that big driver that makes you say, "Oh, I do want to watch this game. I've heard of that guy. I think he'll be fun to watch," kind of thing. They're just the NBA hasn't pushed that. And I think that's really dangerous. You look at leagues that don't do that. The NHL, for instance. The NHL, I think, is really, really good product, but they don't push their guys. Who knows about Austin Matthews? Who knows about Connor McDavid, right? These are guys that should and have separated themselves from the group, but they're not being pushed like that. The NHL just doesn't market its players enough. And I'm worried that the NBA is starting to do the same thing. And I'm not saying it's going to shrink. But you did make a very good point about the international market, right? Because the international market is growing at an insane pace. We're seeing, 4 of the top 5 players in the NBA right now are not Americans. Shea, Canadian even, right? If you want to, just take that away from just the North American
absolutely.
market. But there are a lot of super international players, But we just saw the reaction to the NFL naming Bad Bunny the Super Bowl halftime performer, right? I don't know how the rest of the country is going to react if the NBA says, you know what, screw American athletes. We're pushing international athletes. We're trying to get this international, which again is a good business model. Straight up a good business model. That's why the NFL is doing it. That's why they're playing all these international games. That's why Bad Bunny is playing the halftime show, because it's not just American fans, right? There's plenty of Spanish-speaking fans from around the world, and also Bad Bunny is one of the most popular artists in the world right now. But regardless of all of that, getting back to basketball here, that's something that you have to worry about too. PR sometimes just has nothing to do with the basketball on the court. And if you can't push those international players, let's just say the PR department decides that it has to be an American because look at the pushback the NFL got. And if they got that pushback, what's the NBA going to do? Is Anthony Edwards going to be that guy? He's got the charisma to do it, but has he really separated himself from the group enough to be the face of the league? I just don't know.
No, he hasn't, and that's the thing. He's a good player. He's solidified himself as a. If you know basketball, you know he's a playoff legend killer. He took out KD, took out LeBron. Uh, but you can't trust him to. He has some. He also has some off the court issues that have sprung up a couple times, but if outside of Anthony Edwards, who are you going to say? Jason Tatum? And he's the guy that doesn't spring out at you either. I mean, I'm a Celtics fan, but like a lot of people have said it before. Who are you going to put? Jason Tatum in that conversation? The really legit guy that you can put outside of international as a U.S. domestic guy to push for yourself is Anthony Edwards. And that's just the truth.
Yeah. There's a lot to talk about. We'll talk about it more once we get the actual announcement. LeBron James going to make some kind of big announcement, the Decision 2, as he's calling it, tonight at 7 p.m. We'll keep an eye out for that, and we'll talk about it on tomorrow's show, so make sure you tune in for that with the fallout of the second decision. But let's talk a little bit about playoff baseball here, Mayrob, because baseball, it's just been a really good playoffs. First of all, the wild card series were a lot of fun, but let's talk a little bit about the Yankees. That's kind of where we have to start this. Like, I'm sure this is going to bring a big smile to your face, my friend. The Red Sox lose to the Yankees. Brutal fashions. The Yankees lose. 30 runs on them. How about that? 30 runs in 2 games. Wow. The Blue Jays are absolutely dominating them. The series goes back to New York tonight. Is it going to be a sweep? Do the Yankees have a chance? Can they beat anybody?
Nope. Nope. Well, unless it's the Red Sox, apparently they can't beat anybody. They wouldn't be beating the Mariners. They wouldn't be beating the Tigers. They wouldn't be beating the Blue Jays right now, as you can see. So I think the Yankees are in a absolute mess. I think this is Aaron Boone's final season with the Yankees. And until Aaron Boone leaves, the Yankees lose. That's my take on it.
Aaron Boone, I mean, he's not great as a manager, honestly. But I think baseball is one of those sports where the managers make the, least amount of difference overall. 10-1 in game 1, 13-7 in game 2. Game 3 tonight, the Blue Jays have Shane Bieber on the mound going up against Carlos Rodon, who in his first game in the playoffs went 6 innings, 4.5 ERA overall. I'm just not, again, I want to give the Yankees a chance because you have Aaron Judge, and whenever you have Aaron Judge, you do have a chance. Bo Bichette's still not playing for the Blue Jays, and they've been able to put up all this offense without him. The Yankees need to get more pitching. It's not even the offense. Like, when you put up 7 runs in a playoff game, you should win that game. Just objectively, it's the playoffs. You shouldn't be letting the team score 23 on your head in 2 games, 10 and 13. It really is just a really bad showing. They're back in Yankee Stadium, where the Yankees have been really good, but the Blue Jays, 40-41 away. That's something you talk about a lot, Rob. I know you just said that the Yankees got no chance, but I could see them taking this game in game 3. I don't see them winning this series, but I think they come out with a little more juice, a little more passion, try and get it to game 4 where Cam Schlittler can get a little bit of a second chance after looking really, really good in that last wild card game against the Red Sox. He's projected for game 4. If they can make it a game 5, that would be crazy. I assume Max Fried would go for that game 5 for them, but we're just going to have to see. I'm leaning towards the Yankees game 3, Blue Jays game 4, and the Blue Jays advance. Outside of that one, let's stay in the AL. There's really only been one series so far. The Tigers and the Mariners, two teams going at each other. These two games have been really good so far. The only series tied at 1. Every other series is 2-2, Mayrob. The Mariners get a big win, a big 8th inning, powers them over the Tigers in game 2. That series has been really fun to watch. It's been the closest one by score and obviously by games. The Tigers, who were cold, frigid heading into the playoffs, won two games out of 3 against the Cleveland Guardians, a team that they couldn't beat in the regular season. And now they're putting the Mariners up to the test. I think this is the Mariners team that is my favorite to win the World Series this year. But what's your take on this series so far, 2 games into it?
I think this is a series that's going to continue to be back and forth. I expect the series to go all 5 games. I mean, the first game, when it's overtime, both games have been, 3-2 games, I believe? Yeah, Tigers won 3-2 in game 1, Mariners won 3-2 in game 2. So I expect this series to continue to flip back and forth, but I still have the Mariners winning this series. It's a really tough one. It's going to be a coin flip series back and forth throughout the rest of the way, but I think the Mariners are just that good of a team. I expect them to advance to ALCS and most likely advance to the World Series. I don't know if I'm ready to say they're going to win it all, but the Mariners do look dangerous right now in the AL, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, the real thing that I talk about all the time when it comes to playoff baseball is pitching. And I think the Mariners have the best pitching staff just frankly in all of baseball. You had a really good performance from Luis Castillo in game 2. You had, again, a really good performance from George Kirby in game 1. And now you have Logan Gilbert going against Jack Flaherty, who, yes, had a good outing against the Guardians in the wild card round, but that was a Guardians team that was starting like 4 rookies, right? That was a Guardians team that had multiple guys make debuts in that series, which is crazy. Shout out Chase DeLauder over there. Debut, former JMU Duke. Shout out for him. But it wasn't enough. This is a really good Mariners team that got hot down the stretch of the season, which again, being hot matters a lot in the playoffs for baseball. I just trust their pitching staff at the end of the day, and I can't say the same thing for the Tigers. As good as, Skubal is, he's not pitching every single day, and if he's not out there, it's not a guarantee that the Tigers win any of these pitching matchups ever. Jack Flaherty has his moments, but I just don't think he's going to keep up against still a really, really good Mariners lineup. I think they're the most complete team in baseball overall, and I have them going to the World Series. Let's flip over to the NL side of things. We saw 2 games last night. The early game saw the Phillies nearly come back with 2 runs in the 9th inning, but not quite enough. The Dodgers, with a 2-0 lead in that series, look to close out the game tomorrow on TBS, 4-3 and 5-3 overall. I think not having Zach Wheeler has really hurt the Phillies, and I don't think that's much of a hot take over there. This is a good Phillies squad. They have the offense, but again, pitching is good for the Dodgers. Roki Sasaki was back last week. This is something that he was really struggling in the beginning of the season. Injuries had piled up in that pitching rotation. Yoshinobu Yamamoto is pitching for game 3. Aaron Nola going out there. I think the Phillies extend this series. Real quick before I throw it to you, we had a question in the chat from Hayden. Naylor being out, does it affect it? I saw him day to day. He's expected to play today, so I'm not super worried about it. But even if he is out, I don't think they lose that game. Honestly, I'm leaning towards the Mariners still. But talk to me a little bit about this Phillies and Dodgers series.
This series, I'd say it's really hard at this point for the for me to see the Phillies winning this series. They drop both games at home. They start with home field advantage. They drop game one and game two. It's headed back to LA in a in a 5 game series. I just don't see the Dodgers dropping both games at home. I I just don't see it. Yes, did the Phillies give up their or throw out their two worst pitchers probably in Christopher or not their worst, but in Christopher Sanchez and uh and I can't remember his other name, Jesus Luzardo. Yes, is it? I don't think they're the worst. I just think there's some of the younger pitchers, and sometimes it works. You have Cam Schlittler show out for the Yankees against the Red Sox in a crucial game three, but for the most part, you don't usually throw out a rookie pitcher in some of the biggest moments when you need pitching like that. Outside of that. When pitching doesn't work, you look over to the hitting side of things, and the Dodgers have that. Shohei Ohtani has been a monster. Mookie Betts still looks really good. Teoscar Hernandez has been hitting the ball really well. Did I mention they still have Freddie Freeman and Tommy Edman, who have been looking really good for them as bench guys? And like you said, their pitching has shown up and been reliable when you need it to be. Has been good enough to get it done for this team. I really like this Dodgers squad to make it all the way to the World Series and win the World Series. They are my World Series pick, but I just don't see the Phillies climbing back into this one. I just don't see it.
Yeah, again, there's lots of ways to look at it here. I do see your point over there. Shohei goes 6 innings in game one. Blake Snell goes 6 innings in game two. Blake Snell's had a really good playoffs, by the way. Just shout out to Blake Snell. He's having career highs in playoff outings. He had never gone over 5 innings. Now in 2 starts, he's gone over 5 innings both times. He's having a really, really good playoffs. And if he can play like that, if he can play like that Cy Young caliber pitcher that he can be every once in a while, this is just a really dominant Dodgers team that is en route to a second straight World Series title. The last series I want to talk about is one that's just been really one-sided. The Brewers and the Cubs. The Brewers up 2-0, the best record in baseball, 97 wins on the season. There's just been dominate. It's just been domination, right? 7-3 last night in a bullpen game, and 9-3 in game one. The Brewers, despite the rest, which I think is something that is a little underrated, not playing baseball, winning games, gathering momentum is super important in this sport. But the one thing that's really been there with the Brewers, the thing that's always bothered them in the playoffs, not having offense. What do you call this now when they put up 9 runs and 7 runs respectively in each of the playoff games? You call that a scary team. You call that potentially the best team in baseball like they've been playing all season long. This is not going to be an easy out, especially if the offense keeps playing like this. I know the Cubs pitching, again, not necessarily the greatest, but still, there is a lot to like about this Cubs team. I don't think they're just chopped liver here, but if the Brewers keep playing like this, it is not going to be a fun series, and I think we could legitimately see a sweep over here of Chicago.
Yeah, I think it's probably the most likely outcome. Granted, both games were in Milwaukee, and that matters to be said, but the Brewers also, I think the Cubs will most likely win game three and then lose game four. Why? The Brewers just threw out 7 pitchers, like you said, in a bullpen game against the Cubs. I expect the Cubs to still hang around. I expect them to win game three. But after that, I think the Brewers just lock up the series. The Brewers are a really good team. We're looking at a Brewers Dodgers NLCS. That is going to be a phenomenal, phenomenal series. It's going to be pitching versus hitting. And it's going to be so fun to see. I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, there's the stat, right? Teams that go up 2-0 in the division series win it 88.9% of the time. So I do feel pretty comfortable in saying that the Blue Jays, the Brewers, and the Dodgers are all going to advance. The big series of intrigue is going to be that Mariners and Tigers series. That game is tonight. First pitch, 4:08 p.m. So something to keep an eye on. A little bit of midday watch for you. But thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Triple Threat Show. We'll be back tomorrow talking about the decision of all decisions, talking about our NFL power rankings, winners and losers, our big takeaways from the NFL Week 5. Big NFL show, big MLB show, big NBA show with the news coming out. Make sure you tune in for that. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus, joined today by my friend and co-host, Mayrob Fatemi. Have a great one. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.